Hey guys, tonight we're waking up in the heart of the Roman Empire. Not as a noble soldier or Caesar. You're just you, a regular Roman trying to survive a city full of smells, shouts and sandals that never seem to fit. Get ready to dodge chamber pots, argue about olives, and discover why surviving one day in Rome is way more complicated than it looks in the movies. So before you get all comfy and drift off, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments and what time it is for you. I always love seeing who's joining this sleepy journey worldwide. Now turn off the lights, maybe switch on a gentle fan if you like that soft background hum, and let's slip quietly into tonight's journey. You wake up in a plaster-walled room with a low ceiling, yelling outside, filtering in like someone arguing whether bread should be dipped in oil or goose fat. Bad news, there are no soundproof windows. Good news, you're still alive. And that's already a small victory in Rome. You're lying on your bed, if you can call it that. It's a thin plank with some dry straw and a crumpled cloth. Every time you turn, it cacks like a chariot needing repairs, but you're used to it. And to the sound of kittens being born behind you, and to your uncle snoring like thunder in the corner. You live in an insula, a Roman apartment block. You could call it cozy if you're comfortable sharing a room with 6 people, 1 cat, 2 mice, and just enough space for a sneeze to shake the ceiling. It's not quite daylight yet, but Rome doesn't care. Outside, hooves clatter on stone. The onion seller yells like he's waging war, and someone is playing the flute badly somewhere nearby. You rest your arm over your eyes and sigh. Here we go again. You slide your feet into wooden sandals, trying to find your socks. Spoiler, they don't exist yet. The first stop is the water jar in the corner. The water's cold, left over from yesterday, but better than nothing. You splash your face. Freezing, but more effective than any espresso. Next is dental hygiene. No toothbrush, just a pinch of dry salt mixed with ashes. The ancient equivalent of toothpaste endorsed by sheer optimism. You rub it on your teeth with your finger like you're cleaning and slowly grinding away your enamel. Breakfast minimalist. A piece of bread so hard it might have military applications. Dipped in olive oil from a clay jar. No cured meats, no eggs, no tea, just the occasional smudge of honey. More color than flavor. You chew while your sister sings a folk tune about a girl who fell in love with the god of wine. Your father is lacing up his tunic while scolding the cat for stepping on a loaf. Your mother checks the coin pouch in size. A very Roman morning. You throw on your tunic. Coarse, thick, a little musty, and wrinkled in the way time likes to leave things. You tie your belt with a frayed piece of hemp and glance at your reflection in a water bowl. Not bad, but no one's mistaking you for the next emperor. Your father says, go early or there'll be no fish left. You nod, stuff a few sisters into your cloth pouch, and remind yourself, avoid the cheese lady who talks too much. Also avoid the grape vendor who lets his goats roam freely. You step out of the insula. The wooden stairs groan under your weight. Each step a whispered prayer. Please don't break today. Rome greets you with its complete chaos. Carts brushing past your ankles, vendors shouting over each other to be heard, the scent of heart smoke layered with sweat, and things better left unidentified. You stick close to the walls, dodging horse droppings and the glances of patrolling soldiers. Here's a fact. They don't put in scrolls. Rome is loud. There's no rush hour because every hour is rush hour. People jostle, animals jostle, voices jostle. At the street corner, you hear a street performer singing, a pot crashing, and a woman loudly complaining that her husband talks in his sleep about his ex-wife. You chuckle and also take a shortcut. Rome teaches you 3 quick lessons. Walk fast, dodge faster, and pretend you didn't hear anything strange. You don't know where today will take you. Maybe a shouting match at the fish stall. Perhaps a sudden downpour soaking your tunic. Maybe an invite to a wrestling match you can't decline. But you're just looking for a fresh bundle of green onions and trying not to step on someone's dropped bread. When you leave your insula, you're swallowed by a familiar chorus. Wheels rattling on stone, vendors shouting, someone scolding a cat, and the off-key tooting of your neighbor's son practicing the horn since sunrise. Rome has no concept of a quiet morning. The city wakes up like it never went to sleep. And you, barely 10 minutes out of bed, are already thrust into your role. A reasonably functioning Roman. You duck into the narrow alley leading to the public fountain. Your wooden sandals clack with every step, tapping unevenly across worn-out bricks. From a distance, you hear the soft dripping of water, a comforting sound in a morning that smells vaguely of smoke and more smoke. When you arrive, there's already a line. An older woman is yawning into her empora while recounting the tragic disappearance of her cat, like she's filing a report to Jupiter. A broad-shouldered man is using a bowl of water as a mirror, adjusting his beard with the solemnity of a senator. You join the queue, amphora in hand and patient wearing thin. You scoop water one ladle at a time when it's your turn, cool, sharp, carrying that unmistakable scent of limestone and ancient history. You fill your jar, splash your face, and that's when someone behind you shoves forward and gives you a full body rinse. You turn. He shrugs and smirks. That's Rome for you. You say nothing. Because if you started arguing every time someone cut the line in Rome, you'd never do anything else. Carrying water home is your daily morning workout. You hug the jar to your chest, trying not to spill too much, and sidestep a group of kids playing throw the honey cake at the wall. The wall is winning. Back home, you set the jar down, dampen a cloth, and wipe your face again. Then you catch a glimpse of yourself, tunic wrinkled, hair messy, eyes slightly puffy, and think, well, still better than the guy who passed out drunk under the spout yesterday. Your mother places a ceramic bowl in front of you, barley porridge, watery, dotted with a few beans and a hint of olive oil. If you thought breakfast was supposed to be joyful, Rome is here to adjust that idea gently. You eat quietly as your father mutters about taxes. Your sibling is scribbling circles on wax tablets. Today's goal, learning to write their name. They mess up a stroke, then announce, "I'll just change my name." No one argues. Everyone's chewing. After breakfast, your father hands you the morning mission. Go to the market, get bread and greens, and none of that wilted stuff like last time. You nod, tug your cloth pouch from your belt, and count your coins. Not much, but enough for fresh produce. If you dodge the price-gouging lady and the older man who insists on sneaking in wilted celery, you tighten your belt, straighten your tunic. Embrace yourself for the second act of your morning, the market gauntlet. To get there, you must survive 3 hazards. 1, the main road, where chariots barrel through like they've never heard of brakes. 2, a squad of soldiers checking documents. You don't have any, but you've mastered walking around them. 3, the infamous cheese vendor whose strategy is to talk so much you'll buy just to escape. You dodge all 3 like a seasoned pro, then slip into the market, where Rome shows off its signature chaos and efficiency. Vendors shout, buyers haggle like gladiators. A man is explaining the freshness of his fish while a pigeon poops directly on his head. You weave through the crowd to your usual vegetable stall. The seller is a sharp-eyed woman with a voice that could command ships. You flash a polite smile. "What's fresh today?" she replies. "Whatever doesn't look dead. Pick it yourself." You do fast, pay, and leave before she throws in a bonus you didn't ask for. On your way back, you stop by the bakery. The smell of fresh bread is divine. The line is as long as Trajan's wall. You wait your turn, overhearing conversations about politics, the weather, and whose cat stole whose fish. Finally, you get a loaf, not soft, not warm, but intact, which is enough for lunch if you ration it wisely. You cradle it like treasure, push past the crowd, and head home. Back at the insula, you place the vegetables on the table and raise the loaf like a victory trophy. Your sibling claps. Your mother says, "Wow, the vegetable lady didn't trick you today." You smile, say nothing, sit down, sip water, look at the ceiling, and exhale deeply. A normal morning in Rome. You didn't trip. I didn't argue. I didn't lose a single coin. In Roman terms, that's a win. Morning in Rome continues like a song that never stops. You've got your vegetables and secured a loaf of bread, and it's time to head home. But in ancient Rome, heading home is never just a walk. It's a daily odyssey filled with scent traps, stone traps, and social traps. where one misstep could end your morning with a fall, a puddle, or an awkward conversation with an overly curious old woman. You cradle the bread like a sacred relic, the vegetable bag rustling in your other hand, and step onto the familiar cobbled path. Familiar, of course, being relative. Each stone beneath your feet has the potential to betray you. Some stick up just a little. Some are slick, as if oiled, and some aren't even stones anymore. Just holes full of mysterious water. You remember the fall from last week? Short steps, eyes down, shoulders relaxed, but bread held tight. The mission is simple. Get home with your body and loaf intact. Rome has no high sidewalks or traffic lights. There are laws, but most of the city runs on shouted warnings, conditional courtesy, and an artful instinct for not standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. You hug the wall, dodge a cart that brushes your elbow, and then hop aside as a fish vendor barrels past like Mars himself is chasing him. And then it appears a glistening puddle of murky water right where you were about to step. Not big, not deep, but suspicious. And in Rome, anything suspicious usually is. You halt, change course, cut down a side lane, but wait. Footsteps behind you. A boy sprints past carrying a bundle of something. You shift to the side and splat. He lands square in the puddle. Result, your sandals are soaked. Your bread now smells faintly of fermented fish. And the boy winks at you. Welcome to Rome. You don't shout, don't curse. In Rome, you'd never have energy for anything else if you lashed out whenever someone splashed you. You wipe the bread with your cloth, praying your mother won't notice it smells like the docks, and march on with increased determination. Do not step in anything else. You pass the fish market. Even without stopping, the smell gets to you first. A cocktail of dried fish, salt, sun, and something else better left undefined. Fresh fish, someone yells, only swam yesterday. You doubt it, but keep walking. An old lady calls out, "Young man, want some garum fermented just 5 days?" The smell will stir your soul. You smile weakly. No soul needs that kind of stirring before noon. You swing by the fruit stands. Grapes and figs are stacked like edible pyramids. You pause, not to buy, but for the shade. Moments later, a teenage apple seller shoos you off, assuming you plan to steal. You don't explain. You pass a sandal repair stall where an older man is hammering soles with such ferocity it sounds like he's forging weapons. Each strike sends pigeons flying. You sidestep again and think. Every trade in Rome has its soundtrack. You're almost home when you encounter a group of kids throwing olives at each other's heads. One nearly hits you. They burst into laughter. You let it slide. Rome has taught you this. Children always win. They're fast. They're everywhere. And they get forgiven more rapidly than adults. Finally, you reach your insula. As you climb, the wooden stairs creak beneath you, counting each step like a marching legionnaire. At the 13th step, your hand slips from sweat. You nearly fall, but the vegetables survive. The bread still intact, just with a new fishy aroma. Your mother eyes you and says immediately, "This bread passed by the fish sauce vendor, didn't it?" You say nothing, just hand her the loaf and collapse into a chair. Your father peers out from inside, smiling. "So, you made it. The road to the market's no different than a battlefield." You nod. He's not wrong. You dodged 3 carts, 2 puddles, 5 children, and 1 determined older woman selling garum. A small victory for a true Roman survivor. You've just survived the morning market run. Your arms sore from hauling vegetables. Your bread still intact, if a bit suspiciously scented, and you're about to sit down for a well-earned rest when your father says with the gravity of a general heading to war, "Time for a bath." You freeze. Not because you dislike cleanliness, but because bathing in Rome requires bravery. It's not private, it's not relaxing, and it doesn't involve hot water on demand. You don't have a personal bathhouse unless you're a god or a senator. For everyone else, cleanliness means heading to the public baths where Romans gather to undress, gossip, and collectively sweat in steam-thick air. You change into something simpler, a thin cloth wrap tied with string. It is not stylish or luxurious, but it is quick to remove, which matters. Your mother hands you a small pouch with olive oil, a cloth, and a ceramic scraper called a stridel, which looks like a bent ladle, but somehow more ominous. On the way to the bathhouse, you pass through the forum. No one stares, no one laughs, everyone bathes. It's just part of life. Still, you're uneasy. Last time, an older man slipped into the cold pool and screamed like Neptune was dragging him under. You haven't forgotten. At the entrance, there's already a line. The bathhouse has 3 main rooms: Frigidarium cold, Tepidarium warm, and Caldarium hot. Naturally, the hot water draws the longest line, a true Roman luxury. You wait, clutching your towel and oil pouch like someone might snatch them. In front of you, a bald, burly man explains to his companion how to cure back pain by submerging halfway in hot water and singing loudly. You have no idea if that works, but you're not about to try it. When it's your turn, you step into the first chamber. Steam swirls like a dream until your foot slips on the floor, slick as oiled marble. You stumble, catching yourself by grabbing someone's shoulder. He turns, nods. Careful, this floor once sprained a console's ankle. You apologize and move on. The room is full of old and young people, chatting and soaking, all sharing the same space. No curtains, no partitions. Welcome to openness, Roman style. You find a spot in the corner, sit, pour olive oil into your hands, and start rubbing it across your skin as you were taught. Then comes the stridel, the curved scraper that slides off oil, sweat, and grime. No soap, no shower gel, just oil and patience. It feels strange, but also oddly clean. A boy nearby drops his stridel. You hand it back. He grins and asks, "Ever fall in the cold pool?" You, not yet, but I'm close today. Once you've cleaned, you eye the hot bath, the calarium. But the line stretches like a senator's speech. So you settle for the tepidarium, the warm bath, not too hot, not too cold, and blissfully free of shrieking. You ease into the pool. The warmth wraps around you like the embrace of a slightly smoky, olive-scented god. Around you, murmured conversation, gentle splashes, and the unmistakable scent of someone who overdid the perfumed oil. A group of men are arguing about barley prices. An older man is somehow asleep, curled in a naturally unexpected shape. You lean back, close your eyes, and exhale. For the first time all day, you relax. Then someone splashes water on your face, the kid from earlier. He smiles sheepishly. You nod in silence, not because you're meditating, but because you've inhaled water through your nose. You leave for the cold bath, the final ritual. Entering is like stepping into a frozen river. You shiver, you gasp, but you're wide awake. Your skin prickles, your heart races, but you're clean and very much alive. You dry off, wrap up in your clothes, and walk out through the last curls of steam. Outside, the sun is still fierce, but you feel at least 3 layers of dust lighter. Your father waits. "Did you fall?" he asks. "Almost, but no," he nods. "That's progress." Walking home, you feel oddly renewed. Rome is still loud, still hot, still crowded. But you're refreshed. Maybe because you're clean or didn't slip. Or perhaps because you found for just a moment a little peace in the middle of this beautiful madness. After your near slip at the baths, narrowly avoiding a collision with a meditating older man, you return home feeling clean, exhausted, and slightly damp in your left sandal from lingering cold water. But rest, that's wishful thinking. In Rome, personal space is more luxurious than gold. You've barely set foot on the insula's stairs when you hear the neighbor downstairs shout, "Hey, Brutus's son got into a fight with his writing tutor this morning. Smashed his wax tablet." Someone responds, "Yeah, heard he wanted to run off with the circus yesterday too." You're not trying to eavesdrop. You're just hearing things involuntarily. In the insula, the walls are as thin as flatbread in a breeze, and sound travels through the bricks like someone's whispering gossip straight into your ear with a horn. You walk through your door and haven't even sat down before the neighbor next door knocks. You open it to see her smiling with an expression that smells like nosiness. "Hey dear, did you go to the baths today? Did you see Pomponia's daughter? I heard she's getting married. But to who?" "That curly bearded fellow who buys all the olives." You smile, nod vaguely, and promptly answer, "I'm not sure. Maybe someone she knows." Your mother peeks from the kitchen and gives you a look. "Hang in there. Almost done." Once the neighbor retreats, you sigh and take a sip of water, but don't get to swallow it before shouting erupts upstairs. Two tenants are arguing about a chicken. You don't know the details, but you catch snippets. "It's mine." "No, it laid an egg on my doorstep. That makes it mine." "What is that?" "How chickens pay rent now." You sigh. Peace in Rome is more fragile than a clay jar of groom. Your little sister sits in the corner sewing and giggling. She whispers, "Who do you think will win the chicken battle?" You reply, "The chicken." Your neighbors aren't bad people. They're just very attentive. They care about everything. Who's eating what? Who's wearing what? Who came home late? Who laughed too loud? Nothing escapes their radar. You remember sneezing in the hallway. Within minutes, 3 people asked if you'd caught Neptune's damp breath. One brought garlic. Another offered a protective charm. It's love in a slightly overwhelming form. By midday, you try to nap, but Rome doesn't sleep. And when Rome doesn't sleep, neither do its residents. Downstairs, someone's teaching their child poetry. Upstairs, chairs scrape across the floor like a shipbuilding contest. To your right, a couple is playing Guess the Object based on sound. You decide not to imagine further. You close your eyes, but then a knock. This time, the older man lives by the stairs holding a bag of chestnuts. "Hey kid, did you hear anything weird last night? Like footsteps, then a thump." You didn't. But if you say no, he'll still narrate everything he imagined. So you nod. "I think it was a cat." He nods. "Yes. Yes. That cat has some strange habits." You're beginning to realize that living in an insula is like starring in a reality show. No script, but plenty of commentary. Still, it has its sweet moments. Yesterday, after you coughed a few times, the lady downstairs sent up a steaming pot of ginger water. Last week, you helped Tullia's son after he fell in the courtyard, and she repaid you with a homemade honey cake. You can't hide anything here, but you're never forgotten either. As the afternoon wanes, the yelling dies down. What remains is the crackle of cooking fires, the scent of baking bread, and someone softly strumming a stringed instrument. You sit by the tiny window, watching a child tying a string around a pigeon's neck on the neighboring roof. You smile and think. In Rome, privacy is an illusion. But sometimes being heard, even when you didn't ask to be, isn't the worst thing. You lie down on your mat. Through the paper-thin walls, you hear your mother telling a story, your father chopping vegetables, and someone knocking on someone else's door. You close your eyes. Rome is still loud, but within the noise are the sounds of family, neighbors, and ordinary people living together in a great city where no one survives alone. The Roman sun at noon hangs high, as if trying to roast the entire city with its stare. You wipe sweat from your forehead and glance at the courtyard where each paving stone is heating up like bread fresh out of the oven. If you thought that after a grueling morning of shopping, public bathing, and surviving the neighbor storm, your day was done, congratulations. Now it's time to work. You're not a noble, not a philosopher, and not a poet. Living off the fame of a love verse someone once drunkenly quoted. You're a regular citizen living on the 3rd floor of an insula with slightly crooked wooden sandals and a back, just sore enough to remind you that this day will be long. Your father yells from the stairs, "Hurry up! The kiln's waiting." You shout back, "I'm looking for my hand." You're searching for your hair tie, but he doesn't need to know that. You work at a small pottery workshop owned by your mother's distant cousin. No one knows the exact relation. You're paid not in coins, but in dry bread, lunch, and the right to leave early if it pours. The workshop is near the city's edge, beside other artisan homes. On the way there, you pass the blacksmith's row, where hammers on a metal ring like thunder. The air is thick with burning coal, and if you're not careful, your tunic might snag on a sword rack. The pottery shop is a low-roofed house with walls blotched in urn colors, and it's as hot as an oven because it is one. A giant clay kiln glows red, hissing smoke like Vulcan's soup pot. You drop your things, roll up your sleeves, not to look professional, but to avoid getting clay in your armpits and sit at the wheel. In front of you, a damp lump of clay waiting to become a water jug, a soup bowl, or a lid for a fermented fish jar. You press your hands into the clay and spin the wheel. It's soft, calm, and a little too watery. A wobbly plate forms. It looks like a hat someone sat on. You exhale. It's not a masterpiece, but at least it has a shape. The boss peers over your shoulder that could sell. Call it artistic tableware. I thought it was a technical failure. Him. Same thing. If someone buys it, you keep spinning. My hands were sore and my back was aching, but something was deeply real. You're making something. Even if it's a lopsided bowl or a lid that doesn't fit, it's yours. Rome was built by things like this and people like you. At midday, the workshop breaks for lunch. Everyone gathers for a quick meal, a chunk of bread, a few beans, and someone has brought a tiny jar of garum. You sniff it, decide to eat dry. There's a man named Gas who pushes delivery carts for the shop. He says, "Yesterday I hauled 2 M4 across half the city. One broke, the other was empty. They still made me pay. Said I carried valuable air." You laugh out loud. Gas is a goldmine of working-class humor, and you realize little laughs like these keep your spirit upright day after day. After lunch, it's back to the wheel. You craft a few more bowls. A friend nearby sets newly formed pots on the drying rack. By the kiln, the oldest potter checks the heat by holding his hand near the flames. Someone says he's lost his eyebrows 3 times. He grins. That's how you know it's hot enough. By late afternoon, you've made 4 lopsided bowls, 2 cracked plates, and 1 fully functional lid. You wash your hands, wave goodbye, and step outside. Your back's bent, but your spirit feels strangely okay. You didn't build a temple. You didn't write an epic, but you made a bowl, and maybe someone will drink from that bowl and tell a story. And that's how Rome continues. On the way home, you pass a cart full of vegetables. A kid drops an apple. You pick it up and hand it back. He smiles and runs off. You glance at the apple in your hand and take a bite. It's sweet, a little sandy, but good in the Roman way. Not perfect, but real. You reach home as the sun dips low. The insula greets you with your mother's voice. "Want some fried cakes?" You think of the cakes, then in the early morning, then the 12 pottery pieces. You reply, "Yes, and water too." I made pottery today with my whole back. After a long day wrestling with clay, hot winds and misshapen bowls, you were forced to call free-form artistic style. All you want is to lie down and not lift a single finger. But Rome has other plans. You've barely sat down when your father says, "Get up, son. Today's the festival honoring Jupiter." You faceplant onto the table, another one. Of course, the excuse for a festival in Rome could be as simple as, "It might rain tomorrow." You change into a fresh tunic, meaning the one slightly less wrinkled than the old one. Your mother hands you a small laurel crown and reminds you not to curse during the ceremony. Close your eyes at the altar or ask if the sacrificial meat is edible. You nod, thinking, just survive 1 more hour. On the way to the temple, the crowd is already visible afar. Incense smoke coils in the air, blending with the smells of roasting meat and far too many people, creating an unmistakably Roman aroma. Children dart around. Adults stand solemnly, and the priests in long white robes with laurel crowns walk like they're about to have a direct call with Jupiter himself. You find a spot that's not too close to the altar to avoid getting volunteered, but not too far either, so your mother won't give you the ungrateful child look. The crowd begins chanting prayers. You don't know all the words, but you mumble like you're fluent in ancient Greek. Suddenly, a drumbeat echoes. The ritual begins. A pig is brought out. You try not to meet its eyes. The priest raises his hand, chants loudly, and slits the pig's throat amid a chorus of a Jupiter. You close your eyes, not because of the blood, but because you're trying not to think about dinner. Next comes the wine offering. A jug of wine is poured over glowing coals, sending a plume of pungent smoke into the air. You inhale a bit too deeply, almost cough, but catch yourself. No one wants to get kicked out of a festival for disrespecting sacred fumes. The man beside you, a bushy bearded uncle type, nods and says, "Smells like good vintage." You think, are you raiding the sacrifice wine right now? Then comes the prophecy. A part-time oracle stands up, eyes closed, arms raised like he's tuning into divine radio. Jupiter says, if the next harvest is plentiful, give thanks with barley, not burnt cakes like last year. The crowd laughs, someone whistles, everyone remembers who burned the cakes last year. You think at least the gods have taste buds. Next up, the sharing of lucky ashes. Everyone queues to receive a pinch of sacred ash to take home. You line up, accept a small pouch, and the attendant whispers, "Don't drop it." Last year, someone spilled it on their doorstep and lost their entire onion crop. You nod solemnly, clutching the pouch like a divine insurance policy. The ceremony ends with blaring brass horns. People toss flower petals and fling crumbs into the air, and children scramble to collect them because temple bread brings good luck. You think if dirt-covered bread is lucky, Rome truly believes with all its heart. On the way home, your father says, "Great festival, huh?" You reply, "Yeah, except the pig part." He chuckles. Still not used to it. In Rome, the gods eat first. We eat after. You glance up at the dusk sky. The sun dips behind the temple roof. Birds head home. The crowd disperses from the forum, carrying ashes, flowers, and a few leftover offerings. Back home, your clothes still smell faintly of incense. Your mother asks, "How was the ceremony?" You answer, "Smoke, wine, shouting, and one unlucky pig." She nods. "Yep, classic Jupiter." You place the ash pouch on the corner of the table, right beside the clay plate you made that morning. You look at them both and smile. Your hands shaped one, the other by centuries of belief. Both are fragile, both are precious. After the smoke-filled shouts of the Jupiter festival finally died, you return home with a quietly grumbling stomach. And Rome, like a practical mother, doesn't feed you on faith alone. But on bread, you've barely sat down. Laurel crowns still perched on your head. When your father calls out, "They're distributing bread in the forum today. Go now, or it'll all be gone." You sigh. Rome won't let you starve, but it won't handle your meal either. If you want to eat, you must compete politely, loudly, and with strategy. You quickly swap into a more comfortable tunic, meaning the one less dusty than your pottery-stained one. Your mother shoves a worn cloth sack into your hand, the designated bread bag. This drill is like the path from your bed to the water jar. You step outside. The sun is harsh today, but the forum swarms like a broken beehive. Complimentary bread isn't an everyday treat. It's the most delicious political invention Rome ever cooked up. The Roman government calls it panem et circenses, a clever way to keep the people fed and entertained, leaving no time for rebellion. Everyone knows that if you hand out bread consistently, you can say just about anything, and the crowd will still cheer. You squeeze into line behind a tiny older woman whose eyes are sharper than a blade. In front of you is a burly man bragging about how he scored a loaf by pretending to faint yesterday. You think, "I just want my share." No drama is required. When it's your turn, you hold out the bag. The bread distributor raises an eyebrow. Got your claim slip. You dig into your tunic and produce a crumpled parchment with the magistrate's stamp. Your father waited half a day yesterday to get it. The official checks it, then drops a loaf of bread into your bag hard enough to qualify as construction material. Not warm, not soft, but free. You thank him and step aside just in time to see a child collapse theatrically on the ground. His mother yells, "He hasn't eaten since morning." The breadman sighs and tosses half a loaf into her sack. You've learned a lesson. Children are the ultimate bread acquisition tactic. You leave the forum clutching your sack, which now smells of flour and 100 strangers' sweat. On the way home, you pass through a market stall to buy some olive oil. The vendor eyes your loaf and comments, "Today's batch burned less than yesterday's." You nod, buy a small jar, and hurry home. By the time you arrive, lunch preparations are underway on the table. A few stewed beans, some leftover greens, and a dish of garham. Rome's infamous fish sauce that makes every meal unforgettable in its way. You tear into the loaf, dip it in the olive oil, and take a bite. Tough, but fragrant. And more importantly, it's yours. Fairly earned. No begging, no schemes. Your father, chewing alongside you, says, "You know, during Julius Caesar's time, he handed out bread to tens of thousands every day." You ask, "Where'd he get all that bread?" He shrugs. A good politician makes people believe he has bread, even when all he's got is flour. You're not sure you fully understand, but you get this much. In Rome, food isn't just for survival, it's a tool for peacekeeping. The meal ends in quiet satisfaction. Your mother collects the crumbs for the chickens downstairs. Your younger sibling feeds a scrap to the family, catnapping in the corner. And you, leaning against the wooden pillar, half a loaf still in hand, think. Rome doesn't give much, but it always knows what to offer and when. From outside, a voice rings out. "Free beans tomorrow." Another responds. "Is that true?" An old woman chimes in. "Heard it myself. New magistrate wants to win hearts." You smile. Of course, this is Rome. Every bite of bread carries the taste of flour and politics. You stand, stretch, your belly warm, your mind clear, ready for whatever comes next. After a lunch stuffed with political bread and stale olive oil, you're just about to lie down for a well-earned break when your little brother bursts in, eyes lit up like a campfire. "Hey, there's wrestling at the Forum this afternoon. They say there's a bear." You blink. "A bear?" He nods, excited and a little alarmed. "Yeah, a real one. They pulled it in on a cart. I saw its tail wag." You can't say no. In Rome, entertainment isn't optional, it's survival. If mornings are for work and midday for food, then afternoons are for yelling at people trying to keep both their legs attached. You straighten your tunic, tie on a thin cloth cap to keep the sun off, and follow the flow of people, all streaming toward the arena. Laughter echoes. Bets are being placed. Someone's carrying wine and pastries. One man even hauls a wooden stool to watch without destroying his knees. You, meanwhile, carry a leftover bread crust, a few spare coins, and a readiness to get yelled into partial deafness. Today's venue isn't as grand as the Colosseum, but it's big enough to pack a few hundred fans. Spectators sit around a circular dirt ring, straw marking the edge. No fences, no nets. If you sit too close, you might get a splash of sweat from a fighter or worse, something flung by the bear. Pick a spot near or far and settle between two men, built like marble columns. One waves an arm and shouts, "Spurius is fighting today. Took down 3 men in 10 minutes once." The other replies, "Yeah, but today he's up against the new guy. Young got lightning bolt mustache." You think a fancy mustache won't block a hit. The first match begins. 2 fighters step into the ring, muscular, glistening with sweat, eyes lit like kiln fire. They wield wooden sticks and wear shoulder guards, and not one of them is smiling. A horn blasts, the crowd explodes, sticks smack together with a satisfying thwack. One spin, one dodge, and both tum like a violent hug. You hear grunts cheering and someone shout, "Bite him!" You turn. It's an old lady, apparently a hardcore fan. After 5 chaotic minutes, one man is on the ground and the other pants with his stick raised. The crowd applauds. You clap too, unsure exactly why. Your shirt sticks to your back, not from fear, but because the Roman sun is actively trying to cook everyone. Then comes the special feature, the bear. You see it being led in by 2 massive handlers, ropes wrapped all over it, snout muzzled tight. But one look at its big, shaggy body and black eyes like midnight, and you want to scoot 3 seats back. Its opponent, a brave warrior named Balbus, is a man a full head taller than you, with shoulder armor but no helmet. Maybe for dramatic effect, or to make it easier to identify if things go wrong. The announcer bellows, "Our champion fights not for gold, but for glory and a jug of wine." The crowd goes wild. The bear growls. Balbus gulps. The match begins. Balbus runs in circles. The bear follows. Balbus swings. The bear dodges. You blink. Did that bear just sidestep? There are moments when you're sure Balbus is done for. But with a slick twist worthy of a stage play, he causes the bear to stumble. and for whatever reason, exhaustion, fear, or elite training. The bear flops to the ground, panting as if to say, "I'm done, but I'm not happy about it." The arena erupts, applause, cheers. The old lady beside you yells, "Give him more wine." It is unclear if she means Balbus or the bear. After the adrenaline fades, the rest of the program unfolds, kids doing mock fights, an older man performing flips, and one guy dressed as Pluto scaring the crowd. It works. One kid bursts into tears and gets whisked away by his mother. You leave the arena as the sun begins to set. The air is still hot, but there's a surprising lightness in your chest. Rome may be cruel, but these moments, noisy, ridiculous, soaked in sweat and drama, make you feel alive. On the way home, you hear someone yell, "Chari races tomorrow." You shiver again. You think of Balbus, the bear, that shouting older woman, and you wonder, how many more of these afternoons can I survive? The answer's unclear, but at least today you're still in one piece. And the bear, last you heard, it was backstage eating grapes. The afternoon seemed to end peacefully, the cheers fading, the bear still running in circles in the dust. And you returned home like a survivor from 2 hours of shouting and a face full of grit. You sat down, poured yourself some water, just about to relax when thud, thud, thud. A firm knock on the door. There is no mistaking it. Your mother sighed. Your father stood up immediately. Your little brother ducked behind the curtain. And you? You froze. No one said it, but everyone knew. The census officers had arrived. You heard your father mutter, "Looks like it's our turn." Roman officials don't knock to check if you're eating your vegetables. They come to see who lives where, their names, how old they are, what they do for a living, if they've paid taxes, and most importantly, whether they're eligible for military service. You swallowed hard. You were still young, healthy, and worst of all, you had no powerful sponsor to get you out of it. The door opened. 2 men in red tunics stood there, holding wax tablets and styluses. Neither of them smiled. One asked, "Name of the household?" Your father answered quickly, clearly, like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. "Household of Publius. Wife is Tulia. 2 sons, 1 daughter, living here for 17 years. Taxes paid in full, receipts available if needed." The officer scribbled on his tablet without looking up. The other scanned the room, and his eyes landed on you. "Age 20, sir." A small nod. Then the question you dreaded. "Previous military service?" You shook your head, planning to enlist. You didn't dare say no. You answered carefully, "If needed, sir." He smiled. A smile you didn't trust one bit. Rome always needs men. He wrote something. You tried to peek to see if it was your name. Meanwhile, your mother sprang into action, pouring water into clay cups and offering them to the visitors with her best, "Please don't draft my son hospitality." Old trick, still worked. One of the soldiers took a cup, sipped and nodded. Cool water, just like home. You breathed out. Your mother seized the moment. "Where's home, sir?" Hisper. "Oh, I've heard the wine there is wonderful." Suddenly, the conversation turned to vineyards, merchant ships, and weather. You sat silently, palms damp, as the soldiers finally rose. "Thank you for your cooperation. Have a good day. We'll return if further clarification is needed." Return. It sounded more like a threat than a promise. They left. The door closed, and everyone in the house exhaled at once. Your father sat down, muttering, "If you get called, shave. Makes you look younger." Your mother stared at him. "No, he'll be too busy hauling water. No time for soldiering." You looked at them, then down at yourself, lean, not exactly fast. And your only weapon experience involved the wooden handle of a baking spatula. You thought, let's hope Rome isn't that desperate yet. Your brother peeked from the curtain. "Will they give you armor?" You grinned. "If I get drafted, I'll wear armor made of bread." He clapped. "Awesome. You can fight and snack." You weren't sure whether to laugh or worry. That night, you heard more knocks echoing through the neighborhood. Everyone knew the census was mandatory, but also something of a lottery. Some got chosen. Some were forgotten. Some volunteered just for a guaranteed meal. Rome wasn't always fair, but at least it was honest about it. Before bed, your father handed you a small wooden token carved with your name. If anything happens, show this. It's your temporary pass. You took it. Just a simple piece of wood with a few marks, but heavier than any weapon you'd ever held. You lay down on your straw mat, eyes tracing the shadowy ceiling, and wondered, if the soldiers come back tomorrow, would I be able to run fast enough? Sleep came slowly, and somewhere out there, beyond your window, the rhythm of soldiers' boots still echoed on Roman stone. Rome slept, but its power never did. After last night's nerve-wracking surprise visit from the census officers, you wake the next morning feeling half anxious, half relieved. No knock on the door, no name is called. And in Rome, that counts as a personal blessing from Jupiter himself. You eat a stale piece of bread dipped in honey for breakfast. Your mother says, "Eat quickly." Your father wants to go to the forum for news. You look up. News about what? Your father shrugs. Anything as long as it's not about taxes or the army. The Roman Forum isn't just a walkway. It's the buzzing heart of public gossip, politics, trade, arguments, marriages, divorces, slave auctions, and occasionally misplaced laundry. It's where you can buy a fig, overhear a philosophical debate between two older men, and be scolded by a cranky woman because you stepped on her cat. You can't say no. Your father has already combed his beard, donned his felt cap, and is walking like he's about to deliver a speech in the Senate. You grab a small pouch of grapes, a few coins, and the most important thing, a mindset ready for any brand of absurdity. By the time you arrive, the forum is packed. People are standing, sitting, sprawling across marble steps with wine jugs in hand, loudly discussing things that may or may not be real. One man stands in the center of a crowd, raising his hands to the sky. Rome needs reform. We must tax pastries. The forum goes silent for a moment, then bursts into laughter. A pastry vendor nearby shouts, "If you tax my pastries, I'll hit you with my baking tray." But the man holds his ground. We've become soft. Sweets are making the backbone of Roman men crumble. You think to yourself, I thought it was the wine doing that. Your father pulls you toward a cluster of people whispering about actual politics. One says, "Word is a new magistrate is about to be appointed." Another replies, "He's related to Julius Caesar's wife's cousin's ex-brother." A third chimes in, "I heard he used to be a baker." You raise your eyebrow. From bread to power, then my little sister still has a shot. Next up is your father's favorite part, the speeches. A group of part-time philosophers gathers around a stone column, yelling about the true meaning of loyalty. One young man in a pale yellow toga shouts, "Do we pledge loyalty to Rome or to our daily bread?" The man next to you whispers, "He's the baker's son." Don't mind him. You smile and listen a little longer. You don't follow everything, but the passion and rhythm are oddly comforting. There's something very Roman about shouting metaphysics between a butcher stall and a fish cart. You wander over to the side market near the forum. There they're selling everything from dried grapes, scented oil, second-hand sandals, and lucky charms made from bone. A wrinkled older woman calls out, "Boy, want a charm to avoid military service?" You freeze. "Is that real?" She winks. "If it doesn't work, I'll refund you." You chuckle, not sure how you'd pay me back if I'm queuing to enlist. Nearby, a child juggles stones for coins. People cheer. You toss him one. He grins. "I'm learning this, so I don't have to learn Latin." You nod, unsure whether to encourage or warn him. By late afternoon, the sun has softened. You and your father sit on the stone steps, munching grapes. He points at a man, loudly debating in the distance. That guy used to be a slave. Now he talks politics like a senator. You ask, "Does anyone listen?" Your father shrugs. "Doesn't matter. In Rome, if you have a mouth, you have a voice for at least 10 minutes. You didn't hear anything groundbreaking today. No breaking news. But something in you feels full, not in the belly, but in the mind. Rome is never quiet, but never dull. Everyone says something different and believes in something else, but they all coexist in the same square under the same dusty sun. On the walk home, your father says, "Seems like a peaceful day." You nod, "Peaceful," in that loud Roman way. You return home as twilight sets in. People still chat in the doorways, debate halfway through stories, and laugh loudly at jokes that don't sound funny. You sit on your bed, feet sore, but deep down something feels strange, a kind of calm. You didn't say a word today, but it feels like Rome spoke for you. The next morning, you wake up to a strange realization. The tunic you hung up yesterday is still wet. Not because of the weather, Rome was as hot as a furnace yesterday, but because you hung it too close to the water jar and your little sister forgot to close the lid. You sigh. A new day, an old tunic, and a mysterious water stain shaped vaguely like a bird, or the Roman Empire, depending on your imagination. You grab another tunic, the one your mother calls your temple outfit, even though you once wore it while falling flat on your face in the pottery yard. Roman clothing isn't complicated, but it's full of layers, not just literal ones. You can't just wear what's convenient. You wear what matches your social rank. Wrong color, wrong material, wrong hemline, or the wrong level of whiteness. Congratulations. You've become the neighborhood's main topic of conversation. The tunic is your basic survival gear, a coarse piece of cloth, usually knee-length with short or no sleeves. Commoners wear linen, sometimes wool. Wash it wrong, it shrinks. Dry it in the sun, and it fades to something resembling despair. You look at your tunic and remember the last time it was washed. An experience that haunts you because, yes, you guessed it. There's no soap in Rome. They clean clothes using fermented urine. Yes, urine. Not necessarily yours. There's a whole job dedicated to collecting it and selling it Tories. You've stood in line before, handing over your tunic and praying the launderer only dunked it once. Then they stomp on it in a vat barefoot, sometimes singing and sometimes shouting because someone mixed their tunic in with a guy with scabies. You once considered washing your clothes at home, but your mother just shook her head. Do you know where to get untreated urine? You? Number then don't wash. Aside from tunics, you can wear a toga if you're a citizen. But togas aren't for people with things to do. They're long, heavy, and infamously challenging to drape. You tried wearing one once for fun. Your father spent 10 minutes adjusting it while you stood there like a wrapped ham. He told you you're not rich enough to wear something that keeps you from running when trouble starts. Then there's hair and beards. In Rome, your hairstyle says more than your mouth ever could. Men can grow beards or shave, but a clean shave is considered tidy and educated. Depending on the scruff level, a long beard can make you look like either a philosopher or a vagrant. You keep your stubble neatly trimmed, usually. One time the old fish vendor looked at you and asked, "Protesting the government, are you?" You blinked. Why? He pointed at your mustache. You look like the protesters from 2 years ago. You went home and shaved immediately. Women have it worse. Your mother uses a thick wooden comb to tame your sister's hair. A process more like battling wild vines. Loose hair, improper hair up in elegant braids. Noble. Too elegant. Then people think you're showing off. Your sister once tried the hairstyle of the consul's wife. It took 3 hours. It collapsed 10 minutes later like a roof in a thunderstorm. You asked your mother, "Why make it so complicated?" She replied, "Because if we don't, people think we're hiding something." You didn't understand, but you knew one thing. In Rome, you don't dress for comfort. You dress to survive the stairs. Your appearance is dissected like a salted fish. If you go to the market with unsaid hair, at least 3 people will look at you like you stole cheese. If there's a stain on your tunic, the vegetable seller will ask, "Rain today, was it?" And if your shoes aren't shiny, and yes, you've done this, the cobbler near the forum will hiss. Your shoes reflect your soul, you know. You start wondering, how have I even made it this far? The secret. Dodge the insults. Smile politely when someone asks if you're sick. Just because you look a little pale, and choose your spot in the crowd so you're never standing beside someone cleaner than you. You peel off your tunic, hang it up, and glance at the sweat stain on the back. It's shaped like Italy now. You think about doing laundry, then about urine. Then you decide not to think at all. You quietly thank Mercury that at least no one pointed at your tunic today and asked, "A funeral, is it?" You curl into your straw mat and smile. Rome might be complicated, noisy and judgmental, but if you survive the day without anyone whispering about your tunic, beard or hair, that, my friend, is a true Roman victory. After surviving a whole day without being judged for a wrinkled tunic, messy hair or uneven mustache, you might finally understand how to survive in Rome. But then you step out on a lovely morning and nearly step on a rooster placed squarely in the middle of a crossroads. You freeze. The person next to you shoots a horrified glance and whispers, "Don't step over it." It's performing a ritual. You quickly step back and nod solemnly, as if attending the most sacred ceremony on earth. In Rome, religion and superstition aren't just beliefs, but a lifestyle. And you, a humble citizen, cannot escape the rituals, omens, and the ever-watchful eyes monitoring your spiritually correct behavior from both the living and the divine. You thought you were used to seeing people burn incense, sacrifice cows, toss cakes into fires, or drop flowers into the river. But Rome always finds a new way to surprise you. For example, this morning your mother says, "Before you leave, don't walk under the fallen column in the forum." You ask, "Why not?" She replies, "Yesterday, someone walked under it and got pooped on by a pigeon." You're tempted to ask if that was divine punishment from Minerva, but her look convinces you to take the alleyway instead. On your way to the market, you see an older man sprinkling salt in a circle around his ox cart. Someone asks, "Did you just buy it?" He answers, "No, just making sure it doesn't carry any bad luck." You nod. You don't own a cart, but you've sprinkled salt around your shoes after tripping on the public bath steps to ward off evil spirits. The most elaborate ritual you've ever witnessed was liver divination. One morning, everyone in your street gathered at the temple to ask the gods about the harvest. A sheep was sacrificed. Its liver was laid out on a silver tray, and an augur, a professional soothsayer, stared at it like decoding a treasure map. Without blinking, he declared, "The gods say there will be much rain, but the earth will bear sweet fruit." The crowd clapped like he just announced the winning lottery numbers. You just looked at the liver and thought, "Looks like a liver." Augurs don't just read organs, they read birds too. Once you saw your father standing completely still in the courtyard, eyes skyward. You asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "Watching which way the birds fly. Left means good, right is bad." You, "What if they fly in circles?" Him, "Then we stay home. And remember the time you accidentally broke a jar of oil? You were about to clean it up when the neighbor ran in like the house was on fire. Stop. If you pick up the pieces in the wrong order, the household god Laris will be angry." She tied a red cloth around her head, placed a coin on the lid of the broken jar, whispered something, and then let you sweep. You sat there hoping Laris appreciated your sweeping technique. You've seen people stop in the street just to cross to the other side. Not because of danger, but because a dog was lying at the intersection. Not a guard dog, just a dog, but it was lying at a crossroads. And in Roman superstition, that's where the gates to the underworld might open at twilight. You looked at the dog. It was snoring, belly rising and falling, one ear twitching. You changed direction too. And of course, there are lucky charms, made of bones, stones, feathers, shells, door symbols, upside-down horseshoes, baby hair and clay jars. Anything goes. You used to wear a red stone around your neck from your uncle. He said, "This one keeps you from stepping on thorns." You never stepped on a thorn, but mud plenty. That evening, you saw your mother scattering seeds on the doorstep. You asked, "What's that for?" She said, "To lure good spirits into the house and make the bad ones trip over them and leave." You're not sure evil spirits are that clumsy, but you slipped on them while fetching water, so the method has merits. At the end of the day, as you lie down on your straw mat, your old bracelet slips off your wrist. You pick it up, examine it, then set it beside your pillow. Not because it's valuable, but you're not taking chances with whichever god might be watching. You close your eyes thinking, if it rains tomorrow, it's probably because I stared at that sheep liver too long. In Rome, you don't have to believe everything. You just have to remember everyone's watching from neighbors to the gods. And sometimes walking around a fallen column might just lead you closer to a peaceful day. After a morning spent dodging sacrificial chickens, circling fallen columns to avoid hell's doorway, and nearly sitting on one of your mother's seashell good luck charms, you dedicate your afternoon to learning, not how to make pottery or dodge horse dong. You'll visit a library this time. Yes, Rome had libraries. Not the kind where you borrow books and forget to return them, but relatively quiet spaces where ancient knowledge is stored, rolled up and kept in jars. You go with a friend named Marcus, the only person you know who can read without sounding out every syllable. Public libraries in Rome aren't exactly standard, but they're known well enough. This one sits behind a small temple, past 2 rows of stone columns and a tiled courtyard lined with flower bushes. From a distance, it looks like a perfume shop, but inside it's more serious than a pharmacist with a grudge. Marcus enters like he wrote half the scrolls in the room. You follow Shilly, eyes darting around, trying not to bump into anything that might cost more than your family's annual savings. The librarian, an older man with salt and pepper hair and an off-white robe, looks at you with curiosity and mild judgment. "This one can read?" he asks. Marcus answers, knows a few letters but very eager to learn. You smile, internally thinking, "I can read the price tags at the market." The librarian nods and leads you into the main storage room. Cold brick walls, sunlight streaming through high windows, and towering wooden shelves filled with papyrus scrolls. Each one a story, a lore, or a poem longer than dinner. Marcus grabs a scroll and unfurls it gently, as if caressing the wrist of a noble woman. The writing flows in slanted, even lines of black ink, perfectly straight with no guidelines. You marvel, how do they write straight without any lines? Marcus replies, they're trained scribes. Some spent 10 years learning this. You nod, suddenly feeling that your childhood handwriting was excessively free. You ask to try a scroll. The librarian looks at you like you've asked to pet his most expensive chicken. He exhales. Careful. This one's a copy from a Greek original. The ink's made from grape ash and honey. The papyrus is premium grade. If you tear it, I'll report you to Minerva. You cradle it with both hands, like holding the neighbor's cat during a thunderstorm. You recognize a few words. It is a description of bridge construction. You ask, do you have anything easier? Marcus hands you a scroll of love poems. You read the first line. My heart is like a fig that just fell. You're not sure whether to be moved or just hungry. Marcus tells you that literacy is a privilege. In Rome, most common folk can't read, writing even rarer. You recall that in your entire insular block, maybe 2 people can write their names. One is the fortune teller. You've seen writing lessons near the market where a teacher yells over a wax tablet. A is for amore, love. B is for bellum, war. C is for Caesar. Get it wrong and it's treason. The kids mutter along, some doodling, some dozing. One messes up and gets his hand smacked with a stick. You watched, then quietly walked away. Yeah, pottery sounds fine. At the library, some folks just come for the smell. An older man is sitting in the corner, eyes closed, nose twitching like he's meditating. People say he used to be a writer. Now he just reads with his soul. You try not to laugh. Marcus shows you a freshly copied scroll worth 3 goats. As the afternoon light turns golden, you step back like it might bite you. Marcus grins. Don't worry, looking's free. Just don't breathe too hard. Before you leave, the librarian asks, do you plan to learn to read and write? You hesitate. If it doesn't require ink made of honey, then maybe. He smiles and places a small scrap of parchment in your palm. Practice writing the letter V. It stands for Victoria, victory. Everyone needs a starting point. You leave the library feeling lighter in spirit, but heavier in mind. Not from fatigue, but from the realization Rome isn't built just of stone. It's built from lines of writing that not everyone can read. And if you can learn even one letter, maybe someday your name will also be written on one of those scrolls. After an afternoon steeped in the scent of papyrus and squinting at slanted letters harder to read than the moods of the gods, you leave the library with something new in your heart. You want to write, not Roman law, not a lofty philosophy, a love letter. The only problem is that you don't have a lover. But Rome, in its typical fashion, loves to complicate things unnecessarily. The girl you secretly admire is named Flavia, the daughter of the olive oil seller on the corner. She greets you with a radiant smile every time you walk past, and you nearly trip on the steps. You've met her 4 times, twice at the market, once at the Festival of Venus, and once unforgettable when she washed her hands at the public fountain. And you coincidentally decided to rewash yours. Romance in ancient times had no messages, no heart reactions, only glances, rumors, and wax tablets. You decide to write a letter. Rome didn't have adorable envelopes, not on paper, but on a wax tablet, a wooden board smeared with softened beeswax carved letter by letter with a stylus. And you realize quickly that writing a love letter with a pointy stick is far less romantic than it sounds. Sitting cross-legged on your mat, lips tight in concentration, you try. Flavia, you are the morning light on a Roman street, crossed out, too poetic. Flavia, I see you like a drop of olive oil in my heart, sounds like an ad. Flavia, you washed your hands very beautifully today. No, just no. Eventually, you settle on. Flavia, I hope to speak with you someday. If you wish the same, place your hand on the largest oil jar at your shop tomorrow morning. You read it back. Not quite oid, but at least it's clear. Next problem. How can she deliver it without being spotted by her mother? You remember the neighbor who once tossed a letter through the bars of his crush's window, only to hit her mother square in the forehead. He reportedly had to scrub their floors for 3 weeks to earn forgiveness. So, you wait near the olive shop late afternoon when the father naps, and Flavia usually polishes the jars outside. You hide the wax tablet in your sleeve, heart through chewing. She appears, hair tied up, cloth in hand, humming a tune about Bacchus. You step forward and clear your throat. Hello. The weather is very weather today. She lifts her head, smiling gently. Yes, it's quite weather. You stammer. I have this. And you hand over the wax tablet. She takes it, reads it, and smiles. And at that exact moment, the back door cracks open. Her mother emerges, eyes sharp as a hawk's, wielding a wooden spoon the length of a gladius. You freeze. Flavia slips the tablet behind her back and blurts, "Mother, I'm getting more oil." You spin and leave at a pace that suggests you've just stolen wine from Bacchus himself. But your heart floating because she smiled. She didn't yell, and she didn't return the tablet. That night you don't sleep, partly because your heart won't slow down, partly because your mother asks, "Why are you grinning like that?" You reply, "Thinking about this year's olive market." She narrows her eyes. "Good, focus on business." The next morning you pass the shop. No words, just a glance. She steps out and places her hand on the largest jar. You nearly fall over. Your soul screams, "She said yes." Love in Rome had no cafes, no messages, no public hand-holding, unless the families were arranging a wedding. But in that brief moment, a gaze across a street, a hand on the correct oil jar, a wax tablet not returned. It's the most romantic date you could dream of. You go home and write a second letter. This time, no nerves, and definitely no beautiful hand-washing. Rome may be loud, dusty, and chaotic, but love still blooms somewhere between the paving stones, wax tablets, and stolen glances. Softly, secretly, and in a way that feels very Roman. Love is sweet, but a hungry stomach growls louder than the heart. After a full day of secret glances and wax tablet notes, you return home to be greeted by the smell of roasted garlic, stewed meat, and slightly burnt bread. Clear signs that it's dinner time. In Rome, dinner isn't just about calories. It's a small social event, a gathering with a loose script, but always someone telling stories, laughing loudly, and occasionally choking on a stray peppercorn. Your family gathers in the small room. Your mother is setting out chipped ceramic bowls that still do the job. Your little sibling carries the pot of bean stew like it holds the ashes of an ancestor. And your father slaps the table and declares, "Today I saw 3 people almost fight over a spot at the public baths. Rome never lacks drama." You laugh and sit down, and the feast begins with the first course, stale bread brushed with olive oil and a pinch of salt. If anyone asked what it was, your mother would proudly answer, "A Roman appetizer." Tonight's main dish is a hearty stew with beans, onions, turnips, and a few unidentifiable meat chunks, but garlic-scented. You take a bite, blow on it gently, then chew. The taste, warm, salty, and clearly it's better than anything you've ever cooked. Your father tells stories while gnawing on a chicken leg. "When I was young, I once had dinner with a girl at a nobleman's feast. Each guest got a quail stuffed with chestnuts. You ask, 'So why did you end up with Mom?' He chuckles. 'Because she cooked better, and she knew how to deal with beans without making me bloated.' The conversation drifts everywhere, from the neighbor dropping his sandal in the gutter to the vegetable seller offering handwritten love poems. Your sister says I think she likes the writing teacher. Mom winks. Good handwriting wins hearts. Next comes hulled-boiled eggs sprinkled with black pepper and a sauce that smells suspicious. You try it. Salty. Your sibling tries it and says, "Yummy, but kind of like the fish sauce that spilled in the market yesterday." Mum glares. Chew and hush. Dinner continues with a plate of boiled greens, mostly cabbage. No one loves it, but everyone eats it because eating greens makes you look smarter. Your dad says Marcus Aurelius ate cabbage every day. You think probably because he didn't have to cook it himself. Dessert is a luxurious treat, a ripe fig just picked that afternoon. You bite into it. It's sweet, like a day without being questioned by the census guards. After the meal, nobody gets up to clean right away. Not out of laziness, but because dinner in Rome is where you breathe, laugh, and digest food and worry. Outside it's dark, crickets chirp. Upstairs someone plays a slow tune on a flute. You lean against a column, sipping warm water with fennel, watching your sibling play with a rock like it's a golden ball. Dad tells old stories. Mom adds dramatic gasps at just the right moments. And you sit there, heart slowing after a long day. After a while, your mum asks, "What do you want for dinner tomorrow?" You answer, "Anything you cook." Dad chimes in as long as it's not that cabbage soup from last time. Everyone laughs. You wash the bowls, rinse quickly in the water jar, then return to your sleeping corner. There's still a grease stain from the stew on your tunic. You don't wash it because Rome is never truly clean. And that's okay. Before falling asleep, you think, no need for grand feasts or rare wine. Just a pot of beans, a few good stories, and someone who listens. That's enough. And then you close your eyes, belly warm, heart light, and dream of Flavia. Touch the olive oil jar once more. The next morning, while you're helping your mother hang clothes on the line, meaning you're mostly just holding one end of the rope and yawning occasionally, you hear a strange shout from the end of the alley. Strong maid, great at washing dishes, makes perfect porridge. Who wants to buy? You turn your head. A small crowd has gathered around a burly man holding a stick, pointing at a young girl standing beside him. She's dressed in plain cloth, her eyes lowered, and you realize it's a slave auction. In Rome, slavery isn't strange. It's just everyday life like bread or fish sauce. Not everyone likes it, but no one can live without it. You know, there are a few families in your insula who employ enslaved people, but they usually work quietly, rarely seen, and even more seldom mentioned unless someone breaks a jar. Your father once said, quite seriously, "When I was young, I almost bought a slave to help at the shop, but they told me he once set the kitchen on fire, so I bought a bronze pot instead." You replied, "The pot can be scrubbed, but it won't cook on time." He laughed. "True, but it never asks for a lunch break." Back to the auction. The man continues to advertise. Knows how to sew, sweep floors, wash her master's feet when he's tired. Most importantly, doesn't complain. An older woman pushes forward, inspecting the girl's hands and asks, "She's so thin. Can she even sweep a yard?" The seller replies, "Your yard's not that big anyway." You stand off to the side, unsure how to feel. In Rome, enslaved people aren't considered people legally speaking. They are emotional property, a phrase that sounds absurd and tragic. You remember a slave named Daphanus at the pottery workshop where you work. He doesn't speak much, just nods or shakes his head, but his hands are skilled. His work is the most beautiful glazed jars. Once you asked, "Where did you learn?" He said, "My father was a potter in Corinth." You fell silent. Daphnes wasn't just an enslaved person, he was the son of a craftsman. And now he gets paid with thin bean stew and 2 hours off each week. In Rome, enslaved people come from everywhere: war, trade, or family debts. Some were once teachers, doctors, and musicians. Some were free until they broke a nobleman's precious vase and were sold to repay the invisible debt. You ask your mother, "Has anyone in our neighborhood ever been a slave?" She pauses. Yes, old Clea on the second floor. She was freed at 40. Now she lives by men and clothes. You remember, Clea often fixes your tunics, muttering. Young people these days don't know how to press a shirt straight. Though viewed as lesser, many enslaved people held families together. They care for children, cook, and keep accounts and secrets. There's a neighborhood joke. If the wife doesn't know where the husband went, the slave probably does. You once heard of an enslaved person freed after 20 years of loyal service. When asked what he planned to do, he replied, "Sleep without someone shouting my name before dawn." That story made you laugh, then fall quiet. Of course, not everyone mistreats enslaved people. Some treat them like family, but others see them as walking tools. And if that tool drops a cup or speaks out of turn, the cost can be a lifetime. By day's end, you see the man leading the newly purchased slave girl down the alley across from yours. Her head still bowed. No cries, no tears, just walking. You return home, open the door and glance around. Your mother's stoke in the fire. Your sibling is patching a tunic. Your father rests with his legs crossed, eyes half closed. Each has a task, a voice, a choice. You sit on the mat, feeling light as mist and heavy as stone. You are free, but you didn't choose where you were born, and neither did they. You close your eyes and silently hope. Tomorrow, Flavia will smile again, and deafness will make a jar more beautiful than today's. You wake up with a loud sneeze when the neighbor's cat jumps off the kitchen ledge. Your mother glances over from the corner of the house, squinting like she's trying to decide whether you're getting sick or dusty. How do you feel? Just a little sniffly. Then drink warm water with dill. If that doesn't work, go see the healer. You swallow hard. See the healer. In Rome, that phrase could mean rubbing wine on your feet, sucking on laurel leaves, inhaling garlic smoke, or drinking the mouse-soaked tonic. In Rome, a healer could be someone trained in Greece who studied philosophy, anatomy, and theology, or someone who once cured a nobleman's stomachache by rubbing counterclockwise and now runs a clinic under a sign reading, "Cures pain guaranteed." Backed by ancestors' honor. You don't know which type you'll get today, but you go anyway because you're a little dizzy, your neck feels chilly, and you're worried your mother will smear clay on your forehead if you don't. The clinic is a small house near the fish market. Outside hangs a string of dried garlic, a few thyme sprigs, and a wooden plank handwritten with medic healer, headaches, foot aches, heartaches. You think, wonder if he can cure crushed hopes. Inside you find a skinny older man with snow-white hair wearing a clay-orange robe. He's grinding something in a stone mortar, murmuring words that sound like a spell. You nod politely and sit on a wobbly reed chair that sways with the breeze. He asks, "Symptoms?" Sneezing, headache, stiff neck. "Did you dream last night?" "Yes, I dreamt of being chased by a bear, black bear or brown. I couldn't see clearly and probably a cold stomach." He pulls out a cloth bag and pours its contents onto the table. Ginger, turmeric powder, dried orange peel, seashells, and something that looks like a flattened clump of dirt. He says, "Mix this with honey and apply it to your neck. You'll feel better." You ask, "What is it?" "Sacred earth from the northern mountains." You tilt your head, skeptical, but you don't have a choice. Next, he brews you a cup of moss-green liquid smelling faintly like damp scrolls. He says, Dried mouse, basil, and wine infusion. Drink. You freeze. Dried mouse. He nods, properly sun-dried. Good for the spleen. You look at the cup. It's not bubbling, but something's floating in it. You close your eyes and drink. The taste, it's a bit like ancient hand sanitizer. Aromatic but unpleasant. Afterward, he touches your forehead and frowns. Your liver isn't happy. What's wrong with it? Could be overthinking. Or maybe those fried cakes you ate last night. You nod. You did eat too. At the end of the visit, he hands you a pouch of medicine, a few seeds, 2 handfuls of dried leaves, and a small stone. He says, put the stone under your pillow. You'll dream clean dreams. You whisper, what if I don't? He shrugs. At least you'll sleep. You don't feel better on the way home, but not worse either. Your neck's stiff, your nose still tickles, but your spirit's lighter. At least you didn't get your blood to release bad spirits, as one healer did to your uncle last year. You tell your father everything. He laughs, pats your back. You know, people used to cure headaches by cracking a raw egg on their forehead and lying under the moon. Did it work? No idea, but eggs were cheap. That evening, your mother prepares warm water for you to soak your feet. You slip the stone under your pillow like the healer said, even though you suspect it's just a river rock, but you don't complain. You just hope you won't dream of bears tonight. You close your eyes, your nose still stuffy, your forehead warm, but your heart feels calmer. You think Rome may not cure your illness, but it sure knows how to make you believe you'll be okay. And sometimes a mouse wine tonic and a nameless stone are all it takes. You thought Rome would be quiet at night. After a day of paying taxes, carrying goods, dodging soldiers, writing a love letter on wax, and drinking mouse-infused wine, who could have the energy for chaos? But no, Rome doesn't sleep. It simply shifts into another state, damp, misty, and just a little weirder than it is by day. You're lying on your mat, trying to find a position that doesn't poke your neck on the dream-protecting stone under your pillow when the sound of hooves echoes on the cobbled street outside. A steady clop like an ancient drum, waking up lazy spirits. You peek through the slit in the door. A pair of night guards walk by. They wear cloaks, carry oil lamps, hold spears, and chew on something. Either basil or mint. No one's brave enough to ask. Night watch is a job both respected and resented. They patrol the Roman streets from moonrise to rooster crow. Their primary duties were to scare off thieves, extinguish fires, and stop drunkards from peeing on temple walls. Rumor has it someone once got fined for whistling too loudly after curfew. The reason? He startled the statue of Jupiter. You roll over and try to fall asleep again, but Rome at night has its soundtrack. Distant barking, someone scolding a crying child, and somewhere the crash of a cup, maybe from a cat, maybe from too much wine. The older man downstairs begins reciting poetry. The same poem every night for 3 years. You know it by heart now. You could finish the last line even if you woke up mid-dream. A bit later, you hear quiet footsteps in the courtyard. You peek through the curtain. A skinny boy, red-faced, is trying to climb through his girlfriend's window. Unfortunately, he picks the wrong one. Your father's room. You catch just a glimpse of your father bolting upright, grabbing a sandal, and shouting like a summer thunderstorm. What do you think you're climbing? The boy vanishes like smoke. Your father grumbles. Rome's gone mad these days. The night deepens. The air cools. You hear someone singing faintly down the road. A trembling voice. Maybe a night vendor or a bard who lost his way. The song repeats. Roma. Roma. Fair as a dream, but who can sleep in you, it seems. You nod silently. Truth. In the dark, you hear a door creak shut. Was it the healer from yesterday, or is the neighbor going to make a moon offering? You're not sure, but you know one thing. Some people never truly sleep because of duty, habit, or worry. Sometimes the guards knock on doors to check for open flames. They ensure no one leaves a lamp burning, because Rome has burned before and no one forgets. You remember your father's story. Someone was grilling fish. The flame caught a rag, then the thatch roof. By the time they tried to stop it, the whole block was glowing. Since then, the Night Watch doesn't just guard peace. They guard the fire, the stillness, and the fragile trust of untroubled dreams. Near dawn, a breeze slips through the door. You pull your old cloak tighter, tucking your nose in from the chill. Rome's noise softens. Sleep finally creeps in. Somewhere, someone is starting their shift. Someone is closing their eyes for the first time tonight. Someone is whispering to Somnes, the god of sleep, hoping for a quiet night. You think no one says it aloud, but Rome is held together by those who walk in darkness so others can dream. And you're grateful for them, the quiet ones who keep the city standing while you sleep. You had just fallen back asleep after a long night filled with horse hooves. Your father yelling at the wrong window climber and an off-key lullaby echoing from the street when at dawn the entire insula was jolted awake by the clamour of drums and cymbals. You bolted upright, still groggy, blinking. Is something on fire? Your father's voice called from the doorway. No, today's the festival. Bacchus's feast. Your jaw dropped. Then you flopped back onto your mat. Oh no, suppose you've never heard of Bacchus, the god of wine, parties, and everything that makes people dance until they forget their names. Congratulations. But if you live in Rome, you can't escape the festival. Because on this day, the whole city goes legally insane. You step outside in your least wrinkled tunic. People decorate their homes on the streets with vines, flowers, red ribbons, and ceramic masks. A child runs past you wearing a lion head made of straw, shouting, "I am Bacchus. Give me wine or go mad." You don't have time to react before flowers are dumped over your head. Your mother is making grape wine cakes, muttering as she stirs. Last year, someone got drunk, rolled into the hearth, burned their sleeve. Don't drink more than 3 cups, you hear? Your father just laughs. That was the fried cake's fault. The wine's still a friend. You vow to stay sober, but Rome during a festival doesn't give you a chance. By noon, the main streets are packed. People wear bizarre masks, goat faces, suns, a smiling pastry with eyes. Music blasts from every corner, flutes, drums, wild shouts. Some dance with baskets of grapes on their heads. Others play blind wine guessing games. You join one. They hand you a cup and ask, "Canian grapes or Hispania?" You sip and reply, "Tastes like my little sister's neighbor's house wine." Someone beside you whispers, "That means it's cheap." An older man, cheeks as red as ripe tomatoes, throws his arm around you and declares, "I'm Bacchus's cousin." That makes you my nephew. You nod. Drunk people need family too. In the afternoon, the sacred procession begins. A chariot adorned with grapes, purple cloth, and a nearly 3-meter-tall wooden statue of Bacchus is dragged through the streets. You're not sure why the statue is wearing sunglasses, but the crowd bows respectfully. Some scatter powders into the air, some play flutes, some kneel and secretly sketch the statue on wax tablets to remember the god passed by here. They claim. As the sun begins to tilt westward, you realize Rome has become a giant stage. Some play gods, others drunken guards, and one guy pretends to be a living wine jug, meaning he sits there while people pour into him. All rules vanish beneath the laughter. You're dragged into a game of truth or chug. If you lie, you drink a soup bowl-sized cup of wine. A girl asks, "Did you write a love letter and hide it under an olive oil jar?" You blush, tempted to lie, but you don't want to drink more. Yes. Everyone claps. A woman shouts, "How romantic!" Like catalysis's. You think more like a schoolboy poet. When night falls, Rome is still glowing. Oil lamps hang everywhere. People dance, eat cakes, drink wine, and shout into the sky. Thank you, Bacchus, for giving us a reason to forget every reason. You sit on the steps, tunic wrinkled, hair a mess, holding half a cup of watery wine. Beside you, Bacchus's cousin snores on your shoulder. You smile. Rome knows how to exhaust you, but it also knows how to make you laugh like you never were. And even if tomorrow your head aches, your mother scolds you and you ask yourself, what did I even do? You'll still remember tonight as a memory scented with grapes, pulsing with drums, and laced with the faint smell of burnt cake. You wake up the next morning with a pounding head, a mouth as dry as the Egyptian desert, and a strange lingering question. Who kissed the statue of Bacchus before your mum dragged you home? You groggy crawl up, splash cold water on your face, then realize something far more urgent than old wine fog. I need to go now. The problem is, this is ancient Rome. And if you think going to the bathroom is just a simple matter of shutting a door and taking care of business quietly, congratulations. You clearly don't understand Rome. You grab a small cloth because your mother insists never go out empty-handed. Head out the door and march toward the public latrines near the square. On the way, you run into neighbors, old friends, and even the physician who once gave you mouse-infused wine. Everyone nods politely because everyone knows this hour is sacred. It's business time. Rome's public toilets are nothing like you imagine. It's a long stone room, partially roofed with a row of stone benches full of carved holes, no partitions, no privacy. There is no concept of alone time. You take a deep breath and step inside. About 8 people are already there, all seated, all focused. It looks more like a strangely solemn group meeting, except everyone's slightly hunched forward in quiet concentration. You find an empty spot. The stone is freezing. The hole is generously wide. You sit down, doing your best not to look left, right, or anywhere except your knees. But of course, in Rome, silence is a luxury. The man to your left nods and says, "Bad grape season. Ferments too fast. Gives everyone stomach issues." You nod back awkwardly. Yeah, probably." The guy to your right chuckles. "First time here?" "Don't sit near the door. Draft hits you hard. I did last week." Still sniffly. You say nothing. You focus. You try to finish your mission. But then you realize you forgot the sponge stick. In Rome, they use terrorism. A communal sponge on a stick soaked in salt water. Yes, it's shared. Yes, you're supposed to rinse it. Yes. You now regret everything. You spot one nearby, possibly unused. Possibly not. No one knows for sure, but you must be brave because Rome doesn't have lavender-scented toilet rolls. You pick up the stick and tell yourself, "This is my moment." Like a Roman soldier going to battle, once done, you wash your hands with water and ashes. Not fragrant, but clean enough. As you're about to leave, the man on your left casually adds, "You know, someone once got bitten by a snake that crawled up through the hole." You freeze. He laughs. "Kidding. That was in Egypt." You give a nervous laugh. Then power walks straight out. On the way home, you run into your father. He asks, "Where have you been?" You reply, "Public latrine." He nods seriously. You know the Roman Empire wasn't built on armies alone. It was built on sewers. The Cloaca Maxima, greatest drainage system in the world. You nod back solemnly, though in your heart you think, great system, sure, but maybe at a curtain. Back home, you rewash your face, rewash your hands, and try to wash your memory. Your mother asks, "You all right?" You reply, "I'm fine. I just understand Roman sacrifice a little better now." That evening, you sit silently sipping fennel tea, staring into the middle distance. Who needs a battlefield? You think when you've braved a Roman public toilet, and of all the empire's greatness, its marble temples, its roaring legions, its gods carved in stone, you'll remember most is that cold stone bench and that one terrifyingly communal sponge on a stick. After a forgettable but unforgettable morning at the public latrine, you spend the rest of the day doing something less memorable. Your first idea is to stroll down to the Tiber River, kick your feet up on a rock, and snack on a fig until the moment you step outside and rain comes down as if Neptune himself just dumped the entire sea onto Rome. You dash back under the porch, drenched within 3 steps. Your sister stares at you from inside the doorway, like you're a slave, newly shipped in from afar, and sighs. Humans are always weak against the rain. In Rome, the weather behaves like a moody god. The morning scorches like fire. Noon brings hot winds straight out of a kiln. The afternoon suddenly dumps monsoons, and by evening it's cold enough to make you regret washing your wool cloak. You once asked your dad, "Does Rome have spring?" He answered, "Yes." It lasts about as long as it takes a man to bathe without getting interrupted. When it rains, Rome doesn't look like a painting. The stone roads turn slick as waxed tables. Puddles gather everywhere, and most annoyingly, the public drainage system sometimes decides to take a day off. You watch the water sluggishly roll past your feet, carrying a leaf, a broken comb, and though no one wants to confirm it, someone's lost sandal from yesterday. You grab your wool cloak and wrap it around yourself. It's heavy, damp, and smells oddly like dinner from 2 nights ago, but at least it slows the wetness, if not blocks it. You decide to walk around the insular block. Under narrow awnings, people gather in little clumps. Some gossip, some argue about fish prices from yesterday, and others just stare at the sky like they could shame the rain into stopping with their gaze. An older woman raises her hand to the sky. "It rained just like this when my son got married. Still no grandkids. The rain probably cursed the ceremony." Another neighbor sigh. "This rain will ruin the flower. We're back to porridge." As thunder rumbles in the distance, you chuckle, wringing out your cloak. It is unclear if it's divine wrath or just the night patrol dropping a water barrel again. Then, just as abruptly as it came, the rain stopped. The sun peeks out and glistens on puddles full of trash, like the sky is inspecting its imperfections in the mirror. You exhale with relief. But before you can take 3 steps, the wind kicks up. That hot, dusty, throat-scraping Roman wind that hits your cloak like fire on parchment. Grit flies into your eyes, your hair sticks to your face. You regret ever wishing the rain had gone. And in classic Roman fashion, the moment you hang your tunic to dry, it starts raining again. You look up at the clouds and say nothing. You simply exhale and mutter, "Rome, what do you want from me?" Roman weather isn't just weather, it's philosophy. It's the excuse for every delay, missed appointment, or forgotten errand. Does someone stroll? Blame the sun. Do you forget to bring goods? Blame the wind. Miss your wife's birthday? It must have been the humidity confusing the calendar. You return home half dry, half wet, like a pastry that didn't finish baking. Your mother eyes you see rain and sun are fickle. Only a good cloak stays faithful. You reply, "Yes, but mine feels like a small ox on my shoulders now." Your father chimes in. "Back in the day, we predicted the weather using sheep livers. Now just look at the neighbor's chimney. If there's smoke, it's cold." You nod. That's somehow more modern. That night, you sit by the fire, drying your cloak. Smoke clings to the fabric. The warmth helps, but it's not enough to dry the stack of clothes that is still wet from yesterday. You sigh, staring out the window. Outside, there's that sound again. It could be rain, or someone watering their garden with a bucket from the ditch. You think living in Rome means learning to love the sun, endure the rain, and forgive your cloak for not standing a chance against fate. You're folding your still damp cloak when a commotion erupts in the street. A man is being dragged away by 2 guards, arms flailing as he shouts, "No, I was just taking back my jar. It's mine." Beside him stands another man, round-bellied, wearing a purple cloak trimmed with gold, casually waving his hand and declaring, "I bought it. I have the paperwork." You, along with your neighbors, a gaggle of children, and a few old ladies peeling garlic all spill out onto the porch to watch. No one knows who's right, but everyone knows one thing. The man in the purple cloak won't be the one getting hauled off. In Rome, justice isn't impartial. It keeps its eyes wide open, just long enough to see how rich you are before deciding who's wrong. You ask your father, "If someone steals from me, can I press charges?" He replies, "Yes, but you'll need to write a petition, submit it to the magistrate, wait for a hearing, bring witnesses, hire an advocate, and don't expect much if you don't know the magistrate's name." You ask, "What if someone takes my tunic?" Your mother cuts in, "Then make sure no one sees you wearing it again." That's humiliating. Ancient Roman law is complicated but flexible, especially for the wealthy. There are laws about trade, land, marriage, public bathing, and even how to name your children. And all of them have little loopholes if you have the status of the connections. You once witnessed a case where a baker was sued for selling under Ricicen bread. The buyer, a fussy noble. The judge listened, tasted the loaf, and ruled the bread didn't rise because of excessive humidity. Not the baker's fault. You thought to yourself, and I get scolded every time I serve dry bread. Another time, you were hit by a chariot while crossing the forum. The driver didn't even look back. You fell, scraped your arm, tore your tunic. You shouted, "Stop!" You ran me over. The driver called back coolly, ran over. My chariot has money. It doesn't run people over. You told a nearby guard. He asked, was the chariot flying a green pennant? You nodded. Then it's owned by the Petronius family. I can't interfere. You once believed laws were fair, but in Rome, law is something you learn young, interpret slowly, and avoid testing. Unless you have a good lawyer and a lawyer in Rome, not necessarily someone trained in law. It could be an author, a philosopher, a former soldier, or someone who talks well. They carry scrolls, stand in court, and shout like actors. You once heard one proclaim, "My client is accused of stealing a chicken." But who among us hasn't looked at a chicken and seen our future? The courtroom burst out laughing. His client walked free. You ask Marcus, the literate friend in your neighborhood, is there any way regular people like us get treated fairly in court? He answers, yes, pray to the goddess just, or learn to speak persuasively. You reply, and if I'm not persuasive, he shrugs. Then don't start trouble. A child from your alley was once arrested for accidentally jumping onto a patch of land owned by a magistrate. He didn't know. There was no fence, only a loose rope. He cried. The judge ruled ignorance of the law is no excuse, and sentenced him to 2 days of cleaning horse dung in the public stables. You asked him later, was it worth it? He said, yeah, I found a coin in the pile. Rome runs on law, but also on relationships. Everyone knows someone who knows a priest, guard, or a baker who owes someone a favor. Does someone get sued? Call your cousin, the city watchman. Does someone lose money? Ask your aunt who sells vegetables. She's friends with the temple scribe. You once saw a thief get pardoned because he played the flute beautifully. You sighed and started practicing the flute. At day's end, you sit under the awning. Golden sunset bouncing off red-tiled roofs. You think of the man's jar from earlier. No one knows if he was right or wrong, but you're certain if it were you, you'd never even get the chance to shout. You cradle your head in your hands and sigh, whispering. In Rome, the law is carved in stone, but sometimes it's as soft as a chickpea cake. Morning in the insula begins with a scream. No, I don't want to learn more letters. You yawn, open the window, and see the usual scene. The neighbor's kid, hair spiked like a broom, being dragged off to school by his mother, legs flailing like he's about to be sacrificed to Jupiter. You smile faintly. Roman children may live in the mightiest empire on earth, but when it comes to school, they're still just kids. Children in Rome weren't the center of the universe. They weren't coddled like eggs or treated like delicate flowers. They were taught discipline, manners, and how to endure a whipping if they fell behind in their studies. Once he turned 7, a boy in your household would be expected to learn reading and writing, memorize verses from Virgil and Ovid, and most importantly, know how to speak Greek. You once asked your younger cousin, why Greek? He replied flatly, because insulting someone in Greek sounds smarter. True enough. While you're still counting pastries on your fingers, rich kids are reading Plato and debating the meaning of justice. Even though they still argue over who peed closer to the well, a typical school day begins when the teacher, the ludi magister, walks in with a cane. His first words aren't good morning, but rather, did anyone forget to study yesterday? The class all points at the most brilliant student because in Rome protecting your reputation meant sharing the pain. The teacher might order the students to write on their wax tablets. Cicero dicit silentium estum. Cicero says silence is golden. The kids would scribble. One breaks his stylus, another bites the end of his pen. The kid in the back pretends to contemplate philosophy while secretly dozing off. You once tried sitting in on a class. After 10 minutes, you found yourself missing the sewer more than the word virtuous. But it's not just academics. Roman children also had to learn the art of bathing. It sounds simple, but it's practically a curriculum. You must rinse correctly. Never bathe after noon, lest you anger Somales, the god of sleep. And especially learn how not to get scolded when bathing with strangers. You ask a boy from the neighborhood, "Did you enjoy the public baths yesterday?" He frowns. "No. Some man yelled at me for using too much soap. I hadn't even touched the water yet. Roman children played hard. They kicked balls made of stuffed goat skin. They played tug-of-war with straw ropes. They staged mock battles like Carthage and cried when their wooden war oar made of walnut shells lost a leg. Once you saw two kids arguing in flawless Greek. One shouted, 'You are a heretic, disciple of that useless Epicurus.' The other fired back, 'At least I don't wet the bed like Socrates in his dreams.' The adults nearby nodded. These kids are going to be senators. But not every child got to go to school. Some were the children of enslaved people, of people with low incomes, or simply had no one to escort them. They learned to scrub floors, carry bricks, serve food, and eavesdrop on lessons through the cracks in the walls. You ask one child washing a water jug, "Can you read?" He says no, but I can count well enough not to get shortchanged. You see kids playing Who's Caesar? At nightfall in the alley, one sits on a stone bench and shouts, "I'm the emperor." The rest bow, then pelt him with mud. Because the emperor didn't give us extra recess, you can't help laughing. Children are the same in every age, clever, mischievous, and capable of seeing through every adult trick we think we're hiding. Well, before bed, you hear your mother ask your sibling, "What did you learn today?" He replies, "I learned how to say, 'I don't like school' in Greek." Mother glares. Very useful if you want to survive in this society. You lie down, blanket across your stomach, still half thinking about philosophy, arguments, kids, and insults in Greek. You think Rome raises its children with books, beatings, grapes, and dreams they haven't yet learned the words for. You're quietly peeling turnips to help your mother when old Clea from the second floor walks down. A basket of greens in hand, muttering, "When I was young, I read the poetry of Sulpicia. Now I just read bean price tags." You nod silently, mostly because she's still holding a knife for slicing onions. In Rome, women didn't lack roles. They often lacked rights. They kept the house, raised the children, cooked, washed, and upheld the family's honor, whether anyone asked their opinion. You once heard your father say to your mother, "Don't go out today." "It's too sunny," she nodded, and then went to the fish market anyway because the sun meant cheap fish. And Roman women didn't wait for permission to do what needed to be done. Flavia, who inspired you to write love letters on a wax tablet, once told you she wanted to learn beautiful handwriting. But her father said, "Pretty girls don't need letters. The only writing they need is a marriage application." You said nothing, but inside you swore to teach her everything she wanted to write, unless it was a divorce letter. That one you were a little worried about. Speaking of divorce, did you know Roman women could divorce their husbands? But only if they had money. A supportive birth family witnesses. And if they didn't, good luck in your cold, loveless marriage. Stale as last week's flatbread. Still, not all women stayed home. Some cloth merchants were more prosperous than treasury officials. Some worked as scribes, teachers, or singers. Some managed entire wine estates. And some, though barred from politics, still pulled the strings from behind the curtain. You once heard the story of Livia, wife of Augustus. They say her gaze could make even the emperor sit up straight. You don't know if that's true, but you do know your mother has that same gaze. But not everyone was as formidable as Livia. Some Roman women only truly lived when no one was watching. They wrote poems, stitched clothes, taught their children, and gave up pieces of themselves to keep their families whole. You once saw old Clea sitting by the oil lamp, embroidering her son's name, who died in the war. No one speaks of him anymore, but each stitch was her quiet way of keeping him alive. You asked your mother, "Do you ever wish for anything?" She answered, "Yes." A night's sleep without someone yelling, "Mom," in the middle of it. You laughed, then blinked fast because your eyes suddenly stung. Rome loved its goddesses, Venus, Minerva, Diana. But real women, the ones who washed tunics, plucked herbs, reminded their husbands to wear decent sandals. Rome sometimes had less patience for them. Some wrote love poems and signed no name. Some carved statues no one credited them for, even though the hands were feminine. And some sang bedtime lullabies, as your mother does now, for your little sibling that carried more wisdom than all of Cicero's lectures. Tonight, while you sit drying that still damp tunic, you think of the women around you, Cleia with sad eyes and steady hands. Your mother scolded you for mangling the turnips, but baked you bread for your outing. Flavia, who made you want to learn spelling just to write her name correctly. You realize Rome wasn't great because of walls, warriors, or gladiators. It endured because of people who never got to speak loudly, but always stood firm. And before you drift off to sleep, you whisper, if someone built this empire, at least half of it was written by women, and the other half was raised by them. You're still half asleep, about to wash your face when pounding drums erupt from the central square. Heavy footsteps thunder, brass horns blare with urgency. But this isn't a military parade, it's a public trial. You immediately rush out with the crowd. Romans loved watching other people get punished, even in the grandest empire on earth. A tall stone platform in the middle of the square, ringed by guards and packed with onlookers. A man with bound hands, disheveled hair, and a torn cloak is at its center. A loud voice proclaims, "The accused is charged with stealing pastries from the treasury official's home." Sentence, a public slap and 1 full day chained outside the temple of Jupiter. The crowd nods in approval. One woman mutters, "Steal a pastry, get punished. Raise taxes and no one bats an eye." In Rome, justice was a performance. If it wasn't dramatic, no one believed it. And the more people watched, the more powerful the lesson. Roman law had obvious categories: petty theft, chains, fraud, shaved head, and a name board hung around your neck. Heresy, sent to guard wild beasts on the frontier, insulting the emperor. No trial is needed, you just disappeared. You once heard about a man who said, "The sky today feels as gloomy as Augustus." Someone overheard and reported it, and the man was quietly invited to a southern catacomb for a long-term stay. He never returned. You once asked your father, "Why are Roman laws so weird?" He replied, "The laws aren't strange. The people enforcing them are." Sometimes, though, punishments became entertainment. Take the iron shoe walk. Offenders had to march around the square in heavy iron sandals while citizens clapped, cheered, and even threw stale bread in support. Another was the mud smear, the criminal's face smeared with clay and feathers paraded around like a circus act. You saw it once as a child and asked your mother, "What did that man do?" She answered, "He faked a marriage license." You? What's that? She. It's how you know if someone already has a wife. You owe. Rome also had poetic punishments. Literally, some offenders were sentenced to copy love poetry by hand using honey ink with no spelling mistakes allowed. One man guilty of ruining a neighbor's wedding had to write this line 100 times. Love means sharing, not throwing wedding cake. You wanted that punishment until you saw him trembling by line 70. There was even the public stairs for overcharged merchants. They'd sit on the grandest stairway, holding a sign that read, "I once sold sour grapes at wine prices." Only after a full market day could they leave. You once saw a veggie seller sitting there still clutching her basket. When you approached, she whispered, "Today's turnips are truly sweet, but don't tell the guard." For more serious crimes, Rome didn't joke. Whipping posts, stonings, exile. But the harshest penalty was the arena. Not everyone ended up there, but those who did rarely came back. You shivered when Marcus told you about a man accused of treason. He was thrown into the Colosseum against 3 lions and a sleepy executioner. You asked, did he at least get a weapon? A wooden spoon. What? And he wasn't allowed to dig with it. You lay on your straw mat that night, staring at the ceiling. You hadn't stolen, cheated, or faked a marriage paper, but still a chill ran down your spine. Because in Rome, it wasn't always the crime that got you punished. It was who saw you do it. You sighed, pulled up your blanket, and mumbled, "Let's just hope I don't get arrested tomorrow for bad poetry." Then you smiled faintly, Rome was a stage, and everyone was pretending to be a good citizen, at least when the city guards were watching. The morning begins more quietly than usual, no kids arguing by the well. Number Clear from the second floor was shouting because someone's cat wandered onto her fish-frying rack. You're puzzled until a slow, somber horn echoes from the end of the street, a sound both mournful and far too familiar in Rome. Today there's a funeral. You lean against the doorway, watching the slow procession pass. At the front, two horn players blow long, mournful notes that make you want to pull your tunic over your head. Behind them walks a group dressed in dark robes, wreaths on their heads, hands clutching flowers, carrying a stretcher draped in white cloth. In Rome, death isn't a private matter. It's a public event, like a fair with fewer laughs and more incense. You used to think people simply mourned quietly and buried their dead. But in Rome, even dying came with procedures, rituals, and rules. First comes the sacred washing. The body is cleansed with scented water and wine. Then the anointing, not for skincare, but to appease the gods who have refined noses. Finally, the deceased is dressed in a fresh tunic and placed on a ceremonial bed with flowers scattered and incense burning. You once asked your mother, "Why all the incense?" She replied, "So Pluto doesn't complain when receiving a newcomer." Today's funeral is for old Valerius, the neighbor who mumbled old tales and tossed breadcrumbs to pigeons. Everyone knew him, even if no one quite understood the stories he told. Mostly because he always mumbled. You once sat beside him when he said, "When I was young, I nearly became an imperial guard. But then I came home late with a fish one day." You didn't fully understand, but you nodded anyway. Maybe that's how fate works in Rome. Roman funerals were also a chance to show off. Wealthy families would hire professional mourners, women in dark robes who wailed, pounded their chests, and threw themselves on the ground as if they'd lost their third husband. You once saw one cry so hard she forgot the deceased's name and had to ask mid-P performance. If the dead held high status, the procession included actors dressed as their ancestors, wearing masks and walking behind. A theatrical reminder. This family dies with flair. At the cemetery, the rites continued. The body was either cremated or buried, depending on the era. If cremated, the ashes were stored in an urn and placed at home or in a temple. If buried, the grave had to face the right direction. Otherwise, the dead might sleep facing the wrong way and be reborn into the wrong life. You're not sure how true that is, but your mother once turned your head at night because she said, "Sleeping west invites death to knock." You remember your great-grandmother's funeral? She passed in her sleep, prayer beads still in hand. Your mother placed a coin on each eyelid. You asked why. So she can pay the ferryman when she reaches the river Styx. You thought hopefully the fare doesn't go up mid-journey. The funeral ends with a light meal, the siliconium. Family, friends, and even distant acquaintances gather. There's weak wine, hard bread, and plenty of storytelling. Someone says he once caught a fish longer than his arm. Another adds, he almost married a princess from Tarentum. You smile. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's just the wine talking. But for the deceased, those stories are how they stay alive. You return home at sunset, your heart quiet. Your little sibling asks, "Is Valerius in heaven now?" You reply, "I don't know, but if he is, he's probably telling stories to the gods by now." That night, you lie in your room, lamplight flickering on the wall. You think about death, not with fear, but with a kind, curious calm. In Rome, even eternal sleep comes with a script, with perfume, with horns, with an actor playing your part. And if you live well, tell enough stories, laugh loud enough, and eat your fill of pastries, maybe one day someone will leave flowers for you too. And remember you as the person who once tossed breadcrumbs to the birds. Night falls over the city of Rome. The sun, red like the yolk of an overboiled egg left out too long, sinks behind the rows of terracotta rooftops. Soft dusk stretches across the winding cobbled streets, and the chaos of the day retreats into familiar evening murmurs. The clink of vegetables hitting pots. a mother calling her child to bathe, and a cat somewhere meowing indignantly to be let in, only to refuse once the door opens. You stand on the third-floor balcony where the breeze carries the faint scent of burnt pastry. Your heart slows because tonight is your last night living as a citizen of Rome. You think back on the journey you've had from that sweaty morning, waking up in a cramped insula, dodging patrols and scrubbing tunics by hand to inky lessons and wax tablets, brothy dinners filled with gossip, riotous festivals, and even those deeply humbling visits to the public latrines. You once dreamed of becoming emperor, but in the end you found peace simply returning home with a dry tunic and a plate of golden chickpea cakes. You walk down the stone slope where shops are closing for the night. Flavia, the olive oil shop girl, waves to you from her doorway. She doesn't say anything, but her eyes do. You're leaving tomorrow. I know. You nod and turn away. No goodbyes. Romans aren't remarkable at farewells. They just look a little longer and remember a little harder. At the far end of the street, you find Marcus chewing mint leaves and sharpening the tip of his bronze stylus. You're off tomorrow. Yeah. Then remember, be ready for dust, for heat, and for people asking you, so where did you study? You laugh. Maybe I'll miss this place more than I expected. Marcus hands you a small scroll. Write something on it. So when you miss Rome, you'll have something to read. A reminder that someone here suffered beside you. Night settles fully now. Oil lamps flicker in windows. You return home. Your mother is toasting cakes by the fire. Your father sits stitching a sandal strap. Your sibling is curled up like a cat, already asleep. Everything is so normal. It feels almost unreal. Because in these past days, you've lived, breathed, eaten, muttered, giggled, and nearly wept like an honest Roman. You slip quietly into the backyard. The sky is heavy with stars. The air is cool and dry. No car horns, no LED glow, no phones, only crickets, the wind and that eerie feeling of belonging as if you'd been here in another lifetime. You wonder, if I leave tomorrow, will anyone remember? Will Rome notice I'm gone? Then you smile. Rome doesn't change for one person, but people constantly change after Rome. You lay out your mat and lie down. That night, you don't dream of emperors. You don't dream of gladiators. You don't dream of Jupiter sipping wine. You dream of an oil lamp glowing softly in the corner, a bubbling pot of chickpea cakes, and someone calling out, "Wake up, it's late for school." Echoing like a lullaby you've always known. And just before sleep takes you, you whisper like a charm, "Thank you, Rome, for the dusty days, the noisy nights, the smell of bread, the warmth of people, and thank you for not kicking me out when I couldn't figure out which sandal went on which foot." Light slips through the crack in the door, gentle as a hand nudging you awake. You stir, arms still wrapped around the old soft mat, and murmur groggy, "Guess it's time to buy chickpea cakes, then swing by Flava's for a good morning." But when you open your eyes, Rome is gone. No stone walls, no clay rooftops, no clattering of horse carts, no one shouting, "Bring more olive oil." Only a white ceiling, a ceiling fan humming, and a cool glass of water sitting by your bedside. You blink a few times, then push yourself up. The bed sheets are clean cotton. No crumbs, no smoke. No one is yelling from downstairs to scrub your tunic. No strange cat sneaking in to claw at drying fish. Just you and the hush of the modern world. You step into the bathroom and turn on the tap. Clean, clear, cold water pours out like sorcery. You nearly cry after days of hoarding well water, boiling it, catching rain, and washing your hands with ash. This is the stream of the gods. You wash your face 3 times, shampoo, soap. You rinse away the dust of an empire. You put on a cotton t-shirt, soft and faintly scented with fabric softener. No frayed tunic, no sagging belt, and suddenly stretchy fabric feels like one of humanity's most outstanding achievements. You laugh. Sorry, Marcus, but until you've worn a t-shirt, you don't know heaven. You make coffee and lean on the window. Below, the cars hum in their lanes. No one is yelling, "I am the son of Mars," in a street argument. No vendors hurling cabbages over pricing disputes. No one knocking door to door asking anyone need leg hair removal with pumice stone. Just the ordinary life you once called boring. You check your phone messages, news, memes, and you remember there were days when all you had were dry bread, a wax tablet, and a hurried little love note. You think of Flavia. What might she be doing now? Is she still sprinkling flowers over her jars of oil? Still smiling when familiar faces pass? You wonder, did anyone in Rome dream of a world where light comes from a switch? Where rain doesn't mean rushing to save laundry? Where do bathrooms have walls and toilet paper? You eat breakfast, fried eggs, soft bread, cold orange juice. No one's fighting over it. No one's asking, were these oranges picked from Tarentum? You chew slowly. It tastes like the first authentic meal you've ever had, where you didn't have to stand guard over a fire. You remember Clea, old Valerias, the women who stitched the names of lost sons into handkerchiefs. The kids argued in fluent Greek. The tireless guards, the street criers are going hoarse for a few coins. The wild raucous Bacchus nights had nothing to do with how history would remember them. You sit down and open your laptop. The cursor blinks on a blank page. You place your fingers on the keys and begin to write. Rome, thank you for letting me live a day like none before, for teaching me that enduring hardship doesn't make us weak. It reminds us that the small comforts we take for granted are miracles. You finish the last sentence, look up and smile. Today you won't complain about washing dishes with running water. You won't curse the Wi-Fi if it cuts out for 3 minutes. You won't spiral into despair because you forgot your headphones. Because once you lived without all of it and still laughed, still ate, still dreamed. You leaned back in your chair, exhale deeply, and whisper, Rome, if there's a next life, please remember to give me sandals that actually fit. You sit quietly by the window, warm tea in hand, watching the crowds flow past below with wireless earbuds, spotless sneakers, and busy faces. No one bothers to look up at the sky, the very sky where once upon a time Romans used to tilt their heads back and beg Jupiter not to send rain on festival days. You set the cup down and something inside you shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a profound silence, like a thin layer of dust settling gently on the surface of memory. Every time you see bread, you'll remember that rock-hard loaf on the 3rd day. The one your Roman mother reheated over coals and still made you finish because wasting food is an insult to the goddess Ceres. You'll remember standing in line for flour only to see someone cut to the front. But it was a soldier, so no one dared say a word. And you'll never look at a modern baguette the same way again. Because you once lived where bread wasn't just food, it was honor. One day you'll pass a public water tap. You'll wash your hands, splash your face, and you'll instinctively glance around as if hoping to spot someone lugging a jug from the Tiber, muttering that today the water tastes slightly muddy. You won't take clean water for granted anymore. Not after carrying it bucket by bucket, boiling it, straining it, sharing it with your entire household, and a stray cat that always got the first sip. Then you'll see a whiteboard, pen, and blank notebook. You'll touch the smooth paper and remember holding a wax tablet, hands trembling. Maybe because the wax was too soft, or you were trying to write a love letter while Flavia's mother stood just 3 steps away. You once thought writing is easy. Writing without rights, without paper, with no one to read it, is the hardest writing of all. Everything ordinary now feels sacred in a way you never expected. A sandal that doesn't break, a t-shirt that doesn't smell like smoke, a toilet with a door, a stove with fire that doesn't need fanning, a blanket that doesn't smell like sun-dried fish, even something like a lunch break, once considered a luxury by Romans. You think of Flavia. Does she remember you? Or is she still drizzling oil over her largest jar, gazing at the street with that soft smile like a spring morning? You know Rome doesn't stop for someone who leaves, but some of you will always stay there among clay stoves, wax tablets, stone wells, and garlic braids hung by the door. The modern world keeps turning. You still have to work, pay bills, do laundry, wash dishes, and chuckle bitterly when the Wi-Fi lags. But now you know. You survived Rome. You bathed in cold water, shared a toilet with 8 people, lit fires with charcoal, escaped the sun under a heavy cloak. I got chased for slipping poetry under an oil jar. You were a nobody and still felt like you mattered. At last you sink back in your chair, eyes drifting shut. Rome is far away, and yet very near, in your breath, in the scent of warm bread, in soft cafe music, in stories you've never told but always carry. And if someone asks you, why can't you look at bread, water, or a notebook the same way anymore? You'll answer, because I once lived a day in the Roman Empire, and a small part of me is still there, sitting by the hearth, laughing softly and waiting for the rain to stop. Thanks for surviving a brutal day in the Roman Empire with me. If this video made you laugh, shiver, or feel a little more grateful for modern life, give it a like to show your support. Curious about more strange and forgotten corners of history? Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss what's next. Now rest easy.